Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. There's lots of talk recently about this whole genre of cozy fantasy, which is a kind of meshing of epic fantasy with cozy mystery, two of my favourite genres. And I love the fact that this is gaining in popularity, this idea of low stakes fantasy adventures. So there's no war, or there's war on the outskirts of the story. Our characters aren't pitched into the middle of deadly death and disaster. It's a nice counteractive genre to the whole blood and thunder of Game of Thrones, that dark fantasy. I forget what they called it, but it was a bit heavy at times. The person that gets mentioned a lot is Travis Baldry, and this series, Legends and Lattes, which I read last year and loved, the one about the orc who stops fighting and having adventures and sets up a coffee shop in a town where she makes new friends and they've never heard of coffee before. And this prequel, which came out last year, I think, but I only read this year, about a previous phase in her life when she hung around a bookshop. And those were a lovely series. But it did make me think I should do a video about my own series, the Brenda and Effie Mysteries, which are cozy fantasy. There's no two ways about it. I did this series a number of years ago, and I should give them a push now. They were originally published by Headline in this country, and that was the first one, Never the Bride, in 2006. So it's almost 20 years since I sat down and wrote this series about Brenda, who is mysterious. She's a lady of a certain age who moves to a seaside town in the northeast of England, Whitby, which is slightly Gothic and still quite Victorian, even in the present day. And it has winding streets and 199 steps up to the church and the ruined abbey at the top of the hill overlooking the cliffs and the North Sea. And it was here that Dracula first came ashore back in Bram Stoker's novel of 1896. And she gradually finds that the whole town is inhabited by the wives and girlfriends of all the old monsters from all the old Gothic stories. And next door to Brenda's bed and breakfast, which she sets up, is an antique store run by a witch called Effie. And the two of them are ladies of a certain age, and they start having adventures. So this is a genre about mysteries and Gothic adventures, and hidden secrets and monsters and the wives and girlfriends of monsters. And gradually we discover that Brenda has a hidden past, and she's covered in scars, and she's 200 years old. And by the end of book one, we learn that she's the original Bride of Frankenstein, something I hold back in the first book. Drop clues. It's not spoilers to say that that's who she turns out to be, because that's what the whole series is about. What does the Bride of Frankenstein do when she pulls herself back together and decides to live a quieter life by the seaside with a guest house, looking after guests? And of course, life doesn't leave her alone. The adventures come calling, the mysteries come calling, and she sets off with her friend Effie to investigate, even when she doesn't want to. So this is the whole series, as they are now, published by Snow Books in this country. I think you can get them in the States, but they're not published by anybody in the States. But you can get hold of these, I hope. This is book one as it is now, Never the Bride, the first in the Brenda and Effie series, and that is Count Alucard on the cover. After a long and eventful life, Brenda has settled here in Whitby to run a guest house by the sea, but it isn't long before she has teamed up with Effie, the white witch from the antique shop next door. Together, they get themselves involved in a series of supernatural investigations, including a visit to the deadly boutique and a romantic run-in with a certain immortal count. I wrote the blurbs for this reissued series of reprints, and it's so nice to be able to do the actual blurbs yourself. Book two was Something Borrowed. There's trouble in store for Brenda in the second outing for Whitby's fearless supernatural investigators. Poison pen letters are flying about, and the garden furniture at the Hotel Miramar seems to be possessed. Not only that, but there are old flames reigniting and deadly deities from the dawn of time making themselves apparent. Brenda has no choice but to pull herself back together, quite literally. When these were coming out, we used to go to Whitby twice a year, and the Whitby Bookshop, which is brilliant, an independent bookstore in the middle of Whitby, on the path that goes up to the steps that lead to the top of the town, they used to do events for me, and we'd do signings, and I would read, and we get loads of people coming in to buy the new Brenda book. And you found that it was often women readers who didn't read a lot of science fiction or horror, but as they said, they followed Brenda into these genres. It was a particular take on those genres, exactly what they talk about now with Cosy Fantasy. This is book 3, Conjugal Rights. Trouble has a way of finding Brenda and Effie, whether it's long-held secrets coming out on the local radio phone-in or ancient superheroes meeting a grisly end at the Christmas hotel. There's always some new devilment to deal with, and then, to make matters worse, here comes Frank, Brenda's first and most notorious gentleman friend. Yes, it's the one where the actual Frankenstein, as you can see, the Frankenstein monster returns and he comes to Whitby after his wife. Book 4, it's a big one, Hell's Bells. Penny, we come in with a new character who discovers this whole world for herself. She's a goth girl. Penny has fled to the town that seems like a mecca to all goths. But Whitby is rather more than a quaint seaside resort. This is the place where Brenda and Effie have pledged to protect all mankind from demonic forces. This season they've got their work cut out for them, with the arrival of a film crew set upon remaking a cursed horror classic. Among their cast is the weirdly ageless Carla Sorensen. She's a femme fatale with a dodgy past and long-held grudges of a spooky kind. Book 5, The Bride That Time Forgot. A new mystery bookstore has opened up in Whitby, and a particular Edwardian lady novelist is suddenly all the rage. Brenda and Effie's investigations draw them away from vampire-infested Whitby into a terrifying and primordial alien land where something very alarming indeed happens to Effie. This is the most far-flung one, I think, and it gets into kind of Edgar Rice Burroughs territory, with them going off to this ancient primordial land. Every time there are different books or series or films that get pastiched, and I send Brenda and Effie off to visit. Brenda and Effie Forever. Now this was I think it was the last for a while. It was the end of the series. I haven't been reading the taglines out. Quel horreur is the tagline for this one. Brenda and Effie have made a brief escape from Whitby and are whooping it up on the continent. A brief encounter with a Parisian phantom and his hunchbacked boyfriend sends the pair hurrying back to the North Yorkshire coast, where they have a whole new set of menaces to contend with. Here come the ineffable forces of darkness, vengeful vampires, the long-dead Bronte sisters, and Panda. Panda makes a cameo, more than a cameo in this. He makes an appearance as Effie's long-lost toy. I love the size of the font in these. They're so luxurious. And the paper's very nice as well, which is unusual. Right, and then, after a good long while, I don't know, 6 years later, there's a 6-year gap, and I did A Game of Crones, which pulled together a number of standalone or linked stories about Brenda and Effie that I'd done in those years between. Winter draws on, Brenda. In this new volume of adventures for Brenda and Effie, we do battle with vampires and mummies and haunted cats. We uncover the mystery of both elephant men, there were two of them, and meet Tolstoy, the long-eared bat out of hell. Brenda gets to go back to her roots with Baron Frankenstein, and we even share an investigation at the Christmas Hotel with the famous Sherlock Holmes. Whitby has never felt so hectic, and everyone here is very glad to welcome you back. This is the one with mummies and Sherlock Holmes and evil puppets and Arabian Nights stuff and something else. Yes, the Elephant Man, who Effie falls in love with, and there are time-travelling episodes. Now, that was it for a while until last year, when I did another sequel. And this one's available from Obverse Books in Edinburgh. It's a little bit shorter, Beyond the Veil. But it was a return 20 years after to the world of Brenda and Effie. Things have changed in Whitby. Brenda and Effie haven't been seen for some time, and the Bitches Moor, which is the hellmouth at the top of the town, has been closed up. It seems there are no more monsters, or are there? Kathy is opening up a new bookshop in an old building that was once a very dusty, unsuccessful antiques emporium. After an ill-judged séance, she finds that the deceased previous owner has a vital message for her. With the help of Frankie and her sexy cousin Harry, Kathy investigates the swanky new boutique hotel next door and its charismatic and domineering owner, Alan Danby. He and Kathy seem fated to be friends from their first meeting, but everything goes awry when the inquisitive bookstore owner finds out about the horror long hidden in the hotel's attic. It's kind of Brenda and Effie, the next generation, and we find that Effie, both of them, are essentially deceased 20 years on. Effie's a ghost who comes back through the ether, through the seances and all the shenanigans, and poor Brenda is reduced to being just a brain in a tank in the attic of her former B&B. And of course they come back to life and there's all kinds of adventures. This was great last year to return to them. I guess because I was thinking about this genre being on the rise, and I thought, bloody hell, I wrote this stuff. People need to know about Brenda and Effie. The thing is, when I was doing Brenda and Effie back in the day, you'd get people within the books world, publicists, whatever, telling you it's a hard sell because it's a blend of genres and people don't like that. Well, I knew for a fact that people do like that. And people actually in bookshops and readers and in book clubs and all the people I talked to talked about how they love that blending of genres and the putting of older female characters in those adventurous roles. I had somebody for an agent for a while who told me that the mistake I'd made was not making my characters young and feisty and fit and fighty and making them older ladies instead. But I stuck to my guns, even though when this particular agent told me that those characters and those books are dead in the water, which is such a cruel thing to say. They have been dead in the water a couple of times and they've been taken to hell and back, but they've still come back. This is the nature of characters that you invent that people take to their hearts. You're forced to bring them back again and again. So they've got a kind of a loyal readership, but I think I still need to talk about them and the fact that these books are still available. And I think there are people who would love them. Anyway, that's me blowing my own trumpet and talking about Brenda and Effie. I feel like I should read you some, but there's too much to even... Oh, here's the beginning of a story, one of the later ones. You have to imagine I'm 200 years old and a lady. My name is Brenda. This is the tale of how I came to live in this new town of mine. I arrived here by the coast in the early spring. I fell in love with the vastness of the grey sea and the brightness of the light. You see, I'd been hiding away for far too long in the shadows. Now I wanted to be out in the open air, feeling that salty breeze on my cracked and ancient skin. I've been well nigh cloistered. Out in the daylight, I was feeling positively macabre. Such a long, long life I've had, and I don't remember the half of it. When I say that, you must believe me. It's like there's some kind of fault line in my head, and many of my lifetime's memories have drained away. Sometimes I think the human brain has capacity enough for only one average lifetime, and I have had much more than that. I am very old, you see. But this is my new life, a quiet life beside the sea in the town of Whitby, which has protected itself well against the oncoming crassness of the ages. In the 21st century, it still feels like a Victorian holiday town, with its higgledy-piggledy rooftops and stovepipes and labyrinthine streets. This pleases me, for I am at heart, somewhere deep inside my bosom, an old-fashioned girl. This place, with its busy harbour and hulking rocky headland and gloomy ruins, suits me quite well. It's here that I've decided to sink all my savings into a guest house, bang on the harbour. Here I will live as just one more landlady in a town overrun by that fussy, capable brood, and no one here will ever know my secrets or anything about the many complicated lives I've left behind me. Here I will simply be Brenda. A little tall, perhaps, and heavy-set, slathered in too much makeup covering the scars that only I know about. Brenda with her towering black beehive. As I sit writing my journal by candlelight here in my attic sitting room, my wig sits on its stand beside me, a fluffed-up and neatly coiffed sentinel in the moonlight. I gaze past my wig through the circular attic window as the sea mist that slinks up the harbour and at the stars above Whitby and the Abbey. I think over events during my first few days in this place. Already a great deal has gone on, despite the fact that the last thing I was looking for was any kind of mystery or adventure. And then she meets Effie from next door, and they get involved in the first of a whole series of mysteries. So that's the whole set as it stands these days. How many is that? 8 volumes in the series, and there are a couple of sidestep novels as well that I'll not talk about today, so as not to confuse you. The thing you need to do, if you haven't already, is make yourself a pot of spicy tea and get hold of a copy of Never the Bride and meet Brenda and Effie. And if you've already met them, you can go back and start again. They're still waiting for your company. Okay, goodbye. I'll see you again soon in the next episode.